How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, November 14th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual profile on DeVonta Smith. The elite starting wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles turns 23 today, and with this episode, I plan on pointing out the accolades, the achievements, and the accomplishments that DeVonta Smith has been able to amass from the moment that he stepped into the limelight as a freshman wide receiver at Alabama to where he is now being one of the prime targets for an actual NFL team after asserting himself as one of the best college football wide receivers to ever play the game. And that's not even an exaggeration. So if you've ever seen him play, he stands at about 6 foot and he's 175 pounds, which many critics would point out is incredibly lanky, especially to be in today's NFL, where I imagine the average NFL player is probably 80 pounds at the minimum heavier than DeVonta Smith. But of course, he has a very thin frame, but at the same time he has very good body control, and his route running is amazing. And of course, I don't think that him being smaller than DBs is necessarily a hindrance on his game, as long as he's able to find open spaces and he's able to make those catches, which he's able to do at an incredible level. He has incredible hands. He just knows exactly what he's doing. And then the best thing is that he does have the confidence that he really believes in his head that he is Jerry Rice, or that he's on Jerry Rice's level. And I mean, the way that he plays, you can't find many reasons to deny that if this kid does not put in this power, if he does not put in the time and the effort that the effort cannot really speak for itself down the road. So I did a lot of talking, but let me digress. Getting right back into DeVonta Smith, give a little bit of background. He originally from Louisiana. He would go to high school in Louisiana, and he would eventually find himself getting recruited by none other than Nick Saban to go play at Alabama, where he would play for 4 years. In his age 19 season, his freshman season at Alabama, he would go on to play 8 games in a season in which Alabama would go on to make it all the way to the national title game as the number 1 team, and would go on to win the national championship versus Georgia. That season, first looking at the season in itself, DeVonta Smith would only finish with 8 receptions on the season for 3 touchdowns. But of course, one of those touchdowns ended up being one of the biggest touchdowns in Alabama history. But first, they would beat Clemson 24-6 in the Sugar Bowl to make it to the national championship, where they played against the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. The Bulldogs actually had a sizable lead, but that was when Tua Tagovailoa got subbed into the game. And once the game made it into overtime, Tua Tagovailoa would end up throwing the touchdown pass to DeVonta Smith when DeVonta Smith was a freshman. And then that was the touchdown that ended up winning the championship for Alabama, essentially. And DeVonta Smith was the second half. And of course, Tua also has an elite profile on here too. So yeah, those were 2 very special players that got to play with each other. Following DeVonta Smith's freshman season, where many people were aware of who he was because he made the play, he would go on to return to his sophomore season at Alabama, where he would go on to finish with 42 receptions in the 13 games he played, in a season where Alabama would beat Oklahoma in the semifinal game before they ended up losing in the college football national championship to Clemson. But in this season itself, DeVonta Smith would finish with 693 yards on the season, and he finished with 6 touchdowns. And of course, this was the season in which Tua Tagovailoa was a full-time starter and had to earn his way back into the team. And of course, DeVonta Smith was a very big part in helping him get to this point. And following his sophomore season, of course, he didn't have the many accolades. His junior season was when you really start to see him blossom into the wide receiver, one of the greatest wide receivers we've ever seen. His junior season at Alabama would be his age 21 season in 2019. In this season, he would go on to play all 13 games in a season where Alabama would finish with an 11-2 record. They finished as an 8 seed. This is the only season in his 4 years at Alabama where he didn't make the college football playoff. In the 11-2 season, however, he would finish with 68 receptions for 1,256 yards and 14 touchdowns on the year. Even though Alabama didn't make the playoff, he would go on to make the first team All-SEC. And this is, of course, Tua's junior season. This was Tua's last year before Tua would end up going to the draft. However, DeVonta Smith would stay and return for his senior season. In his senior season at Alabama, his age 22 season, or the season in which he turned 22, he would go on to play all 13 games in a season in which Alabama would finish with a 13-0 record. They would go on to beat Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl, and then they would go on to beat Ohio State in the national championship game. As of course, this is when Mac Jones was the starting quarterback for the lone year that he was. And in the year that Mac Jones was the starting quarterback, DeVonta Smith would finish with 117 receptions in 13 games in a college football season. He had 1,856 receiving yards, and he also had 23 touchdowns. He had 4 rushing attempts for 6 yards. He also had a rushing touchdown. So he had 24 touchdowns from scrimmage in his senior season at Alabama to combine for 47 total touchdowns as a wide receiver, which I imagine is probably the most. But of course, I'm not going to get into that. In 2020, he was named to the first team All-SEC. He was named the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. He was named a unanimous All-American. He was the AP College Football Player of the Year. He was given the Biletnikoff Award, which was given to the best wide receiver. He was given the Paul Hornung Award. He was given the Walter Camp Award, the Maxwell Award, the Heisman Trophy Award, and not to mention that when he won the national championship, he was the national championship offensive MVP. This was all at the wide receiver position, considering those are all the awards you virtually could win at that position. And of course, following his 4-year career at Alabama, in which he established himself as a 2-time champion and a big contributor in both of those championships, and of course, in the middle, a Heisman Trophy winner amongst other awards and acclaims. He would go on to be taken with the 10th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. And taking a look at the other play, he was the 3rd wide receiver actually taken in his draft, taken behind Jamar Chase, who went to the Cincinnati Bengals, who's actually having a good season. And Jalen Waddle was selected by the Miami Dolphins with the 6th pick, but he was selected by the 10th pick, or selected with the 10th pick by the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, he, alongside Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, are the 2 players that haven't played a full NFL season that I've given a full NFL elite or full elite profile to. And just taking a look at what DeVonta Smith has done this season, he's registered just over 500 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And today, the Eagles do play against the Denver Broncos, so that's, of course, a big game for him to look forward to as that takes place in Denver. Hopefully, he can get a touchdown or 2 on his birthday. Hopefully, with that said, you get a good understanding of why DeVonta Smith is up here. He is an amazing wide receiver. In his first NFL catch, just happened to be a touchdown. DeVonta Smith is a very promising young wide receiver who necessarily hasn't proven himself in the NFL, but I imagine with time he will most definitely do so. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 9-10 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well. I want to thank the NFL, ESPN, Wikipedia articles, all the facts and figures all the sites that gave me all the facts and figures that I needed in order to get this episode done. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 9-10 minutes. And if you ever get a chance of watching DeVonta Smith, I would recommend doing so. He currently wears number 6 for the Philadelphia Eagles, and considering he's a rookie, he's going to be there for a bit, so you know where he's going to be. So thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Monday, the 15th, for another episode of this. But until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and hopefully by this time next year, I'll have more to say about DeVonta Smith. Peace out, and I'll catch you next year. Peace.